My grandmother left me her bakery. It was written in her will. Black ink, notarized. My name, clear as day. I found out on a Tuesday. By Thursday, I discovered it had already been sold. Without my knowledge, without my consent, without a single phone call to me. And the people who sold it? They were sitting at my dining table that same evening, eating the lasagna I had cooked for them, laughing at old family stories like absolutely nothing had happened. Stick with me, because what I found buried inside that paperwork didn't just expose what they did. It cost them everything they thought they had already won. My name is Mara. I'm 29 years old, and I grew up behind a bakery counter. I learned how to pipe frosting on wedding cakes before I learned how to ride a bike. I knew the difference between bread flour and all-purpose flour before. I knew how to read a clock properly. That bakery wasn't just a business to our family. It was my grandmother's entire world, built from nothing. A rented corner shop in 1987, a second-hand oven, a handwritten recipe book that now sits on my nightstand. Her name was Rose. Everyone called her Nana Rose. My mother and her two sisters, Aunt Deb and Aunt Carol, never had much interest in the place growing up. Too much work, too much flour, too much of Nana's world and not enough of theirs. They showed up for Thanksgiving. They ate the pastries. They smiled for the Christmas photos. But the 4 a.m. baking shifts, the holiday rushes where your feet stopped feeling like your own by noon, the burst pipe in 2019 that flooded the entire prep kitchen on the busiest Saturday of the year, that was me and Nana Rose, sleeves rolled up, figuring it out together. When Nana's health started slipping about 2 years ago, I didn't think twice. I moved back to my hometown, cut my hours at my design job, sublet my apartment, gave up a life I had spent years building, because she needed me and the shop needed someone. My mother called it admirable. My aunt said I was so devoted. Not one of them offered to share a single shift. Not one of them asked what any of this was costing me. But every single time I stopped by with a box of fresh pastries on my way to visit. Nana in the evenings, every face in that family lit up like I was delivering gold. Nana passed last spring, a quiet Sunday morning, which felt exactly right for her. The grief hit me like something physical, like a weight you can't put down no matter how you shift it. But underneath it, underneath all of it, was something she had whispered to me just weeks before she was gone. She had taken my hand, looked straight at me and said, "The shop is yours, Mara. I made sure of it. Don't let them tell you otherwise." I didn't understand what she meant by them at the time. I do now. The will reading happened 3 weeks after the funeral. I sat in the attorney's office fully expecting a formality. Her name, my name. The shop done, simple. Instead, the attorney, a quiet man named Mr. Vesper, cleared his throat twice before he began reading. And I want you to understand something. A double throat clear before delivering news is never a good sign. It never has been. The estate of Rose Callahan designates the property at 114 Mercer Street, the bakery business, all equipment, and the residential apartment above, to her granddaughter Mara Callahan. Clear, straightforward mine. My mother didn't react. Neither did Aunt Deb. Neither did Aunt Carol. All three of them sat with their hands folded in their laps like women who had already read the ending of the book and were simply waiting for the rest of us to catch up. I noticed it, but I told myself I was reading too much into it. Grief does that. Makes you see shadows in stillness. 2 days later, I drove to the bakery to begin going through Nana's things, to be close to her for a little while longer. The lock had been changed. I stood on that front step, with my key in my hand, which a key that no longer fit, and staring through the glass at Nana's handwritten menu still taped to the inside of the window exactly where she had always kept it, and I felt the first cold drop of something very wrong slide straight down my spine. I called my mother. She picked up on the 4th ring. "Oh, that," she said, like it was a minor paperwork issue, like she had forgotten to mention a parking ticket. "There were some complications with the lease, Mara. We had to handle it." "What complications?" "You just heard 3 days ago that I inherited this property." She went quiet in that very specific, careful way people go quiet when they are stalling for time. Then she said, "Come for dinner. We should talk in person." I went. She made roast chicken. Aunt Deb and Carol were already there when I arrived. The good wine was poured. The fancy napkins were out. And the moment I saw those napkins, I knew this had been planned. You don't put out the good napkins unless you are preparing for something. I sat down and waited. My mother reached into the sideboard drawer and slid a document across the table toward me without a word. "We were contacted by a development company," she started slowly. "Mercer Street is being rezoned. The value of that property has tripled in the last year. There was a very small window to sell, and if we didn't act fast, we would have lost it entirely. I looked down at the document. It was a sale agreement, fully signed, dated 5 days before Nana's funeral. Before her funeral? While I was writing her eulogy, while I was choosing flowers, while I was picking out what she would wear, these 3 women had signed away the building my grandmother had spent 35 years of her life building. You didn't have the authority to sign this, I said. My voice was completely flat, and I was genuinely proud of how flat it was. We are her daughters, Carol said, lifting her chin. We had power of attorney. Her medical power of attorney, I said quietly. Not property. Not estate documents. What you signed here is fraudulent. The table went completely silent. My mother's jaw tightened. That is a very serious accusation. This is a very serious document. Aunt Deb reached for her wine glass like she needed something to hold. Mara, the offer was over $1 million. Split 4 ways that benefits all of us. Don't let emotion cloud your judgment over a building. 4 ways. They had already divided my inheritance in their heads before. I had even finished grieving. Already spent it in the silence between my tears and their signatures. I picked up the document, folded it carefully, put it in my bag. I'm not being emotional, I said. I'm being precise. I left without touching a single piece of that chicken. That night I called Clara Reyes. Clara was Nana's personal attorney, not the estate attorney, her own private one. She had drafted Nana's original will 3 years ago and had known our family for longer than I had been alive. I walked her through everything. The changed lock, the sale agreement, the signatures dated before the funeral. Clara went very quiet on her end of the line. The kind of quiet that tells you someone's mind is moving very fast. Mara, she said carefully, did your grandmother ever mention a second document to you? Something she referred to as the full arrangement? No, she never had. She came to see me about 6 months ago, Clara said slowly. Right around the time your mother made her first inquiry about the property value. Your grandmother was sharp, Mara. She saw exactly what was coming, so she restructured everything. Clara sent me the file the following morning, and I sat at my kitchen table and read it 3 times. Nana Rose had not simply left me the bakery in her will. 14 months before she passed, she had quietly transferred the entire deed into an LLC. No announcement, no drama. The LLC was named Mara's Corner LLC. The will was almost just a formality at that point. The actual legal ownership had already moved. Directly to me, over a year before she died. The sale agreement my mother and aunts had signed, they had signed away a property they had not legally owned for more than a year. The developer's purchase contract was completely void. Their signatures transferred absolutely nothing, because there was nothing left for them to transfer. They had sold something that was already mine, and they had cashed a very substantial check for it. That is not a family disagreement. That is fraud. I didn't call them. I didn't send a single text. I didn't give them any warning at all. I spent 2 hours with Clara, documented every single piece of evidence, and let the legal process do exactly what it was built for. The developer received formal notice that the sale was void. The sellers had no legal standing whatsoever. They were understandably furious. They had paid a significant deposit believing they were purchasing a legitimate asset. Instead, they had a worthless, fraudulent contract and 3 women who had already spent their money. The legal notice arrived at my mother's house on a Wednesday morning. Clara mentioned it landed around 7 a.m. I appreciated that level of detail. By Wednesday afternoon, my phone had completely lost its mind. Mom first, then Deb, then Carol, then the whole cycle again. 7 voicemails total. I listened to all of them, back to back that evening like a very dark and very satisfying podcast. My mother, Mara, you need to stop this right now. We are your family. Think about what you are actually doing. Aunt Deb, you are going to destroy all of us over a building. A building, Mara. And Aunt Carol. And this one genuinely made me laugh out loud alone in my kitchen. Your grandmother would be absolutely horrified watching you behave this way. My grandmother, who spent her final months quietly restructuring her entire estate, specifically to protect it from them. My grandmother who held my hand and told me not to let them say otherwise. My grandmother who saw every single move they were planning before they even made it. And still beat them. I think Nana Rose would have been nodding slowly with a very satisfied cup of tea. 3 weeks later, we met in person. Clara's office. Not anyone's dining room. No good napkins this time. My mother looked like she hadn't slept in days. Aunt Deb had her arms folded so tightly. Across her chest, she might have bruised herself. Aunt Carol, for the first time in my memory, had absolutely nothing to say. My mother tried first. We were trying to secure something for this family. A bakery isn't a practical long-term asset. We were thinking about everyone, Nana ran it for 35 years, I said. That was a different time. How exactly? Silence. Aunt Deb leaned forward. We are your family. Mara, you would really put us through a legal battle over sentimentality? I looked at her for a long moment. You signed a fraudulent real estate contract while your own mother was being buried. I don't think sentimentality is quite the word you're looking for. Carol's voice was very small when she finally spoke. We needed the money. Mara, you don't understand the kind of pressure we were under. Then you should have asked, I said. You had a mother who would have moved heaven and earth to help you. Instead, you waited until she couldn't stop you. And even then, she stopped you. Nobody had a single word after that. The legal process ran its course over 4 months. The developer recovered their deposit directly from my mother and aunt's a civil matter I was not involved in and did not lose 1 minute of sleep over. The deed was officially confirmed. 114 Mercer Street belonged to me. Clean, documented, final. I reopened the bakery on a Saturday morning in October. I painted the front door the same deep green it had always been. I had Nana's original recipe book, framed and hung it directly behind the counter, right where she used to stand every single morning. I put her handwritten menu back in the window exactly where it belonged. The morning regulars came back like no time had passed at all. Mrs. Petrov for her rye bread every single week without fail. The couple from the hardware store down the block who split one almond, croissant between them every Friday morning. The school kids who pressed their faces flat against the glass at exactly 3:15 every afternoon. My mother sent a card. It said she hoped I was doing well and that she was sorry for the confusion. I put it in a drawer where I keep things I might need to reference someday. Aunt Deb left a voicemail saying she would love to come by and reconnect. I haven't called back. Aunt Carol sent a message through a cousin saying she feels terrible about all of it. I believe that she does feel terrible, but feeling terrible is not the same thing as having done right. And I stopped confusing those two things a long time ago. Here is what I know. My grandmother spent 35 years building something real. She got up before the sun every single morning. She answered to no one. She poured everything she had, every ounce of energy. Every early morning, every late night into 4. Walls that smelled like vanilla and warm bread and something. That felt like safety. And when she realized the people closest to her would try to take it the moment she was gone, she didn't scream about it. She didn't confront anyone. She didn't make a single dramatic scene. She just quietly, legally made absolutely sure they couldn't. That is the woman who raised me to be steady. The difference is, I now choose very carefully who I am steady for. The flour has been ordered. The oven is running. The sign above the door still says roses. It always will.